So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second session of the Next Generation Sanitation Knowledge Hub feature. I'm Jean-Wally, and it's a pleasure to introduce today's guest, Mr. Malick Madeira, who is Business Development Coordinator at ED International. And before we start our conversation, I'd like to provide a brief overview of the Next Generation Sanitation Knowledge Hub. So the hub aims to build a network of experts and increase awareness of next generation sanitation technologies across Africa in the faces of challenges and issues such as water scarcity and high infrastructure costs. And the hub caters to a diverse audience, which includes buyers, manufacturers, policymakers, and advocates. And it offers resources such as extensive continental next generation sanitation data, as well as curated research and access to partnership opportunities. And with this series of features that we're developing, we aim to spotlight key features and innovators in Africa's water and sanitation sectors, such as Mr. Malick Madeira. So now let's get started with the discussion. And first of all, Mr. Madeira, thank you for being here with us today. And to start, could you please introduce yourself and share some background about your journey with our viewers?
Pleasure all mine, Mr. Jean-Wally Colin. So my name is Malick Madeira, coordinator of the SSA TA Hub, that stands for Sub-Sahara Africa Hub for water and sanitation. So I am a program fully funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, hosted in Cabinet EDE, and our main purpose is to unlock the investment of donors. So the TA Hub will provide technical assistance in a more flexible manner to DFIs and government, making sure that the end of our TA is to unlock the potential funds of donors. Our key donors, our main partner donors are the World Bank, the African Development Bank, the French Development Agency, and the Islamic Development Bank. Up to today, we have spent roughly 7.6 million USD within almost 4 years in providing technical assistance in 25 projects in 11 countries. And we believe that out of it, right now, it has triggered a downstream investment of 920 million USD.
Thank you for your answer, and thank you for introducing yourself. And I was wondering, as a business development coordinator on this project that you described, what role do you play and what does your day-to-day look like in terms of the nature of your work and the activities that you engage in?
Thank you. Very interesting, because it differs from one country to another, from one project to another. But sometimes how it is supposed to go on paper is we have a DFI or government that request for TA Hub intervention and say, okay, I heard about the hub. You can hire key strategic expert to provide for studies or to make sure that we will have the studies by the end of its period, let's say 6 months. And we want to make sure that all the stakeholders understand the project from the beginning and make sure that by the time you leave, they own the project. So in between, we just have to keep on make sure that all stakeholders are aligned on the project, what are the key output, what are the deliverables, and how will they turn those deliverables into tangible infrastructure investment later on. So a quick example will be Côte d'Ivoire, for example. We have done the National Strategy for Autonomous Sanitation, huge project. And today we like to say that it is the book, the guidance for autonomous sanitation in Côte d'Ivoire. To invest in Côte d'Ivoire has to go through that strategy and see where they fit in, where they belong, what is the ministry strategy, and eventually, if they want to support, which piece will they focus on? But again, behind the lead of a ministry that has now that strategy and say, this is what I want until 2030, for example. These are the axes. I invite all of you to join. Feel free. But at least you still have to go through those identified areas and key intervention that has been identified.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
that is, yeah, briefly what we did in Cote d'Ivoire, but another country with Mozambique will tell us, okay, we don't have treatment plans. It's our first experience, but we would like to come up with some biogas. And you're like, okay, beautiful ideas, but please make sure that you understand what is a treatment plan. It is not your job as government agencies or ministries to run it, but more to understand how to make it more efficient and operationalize it. But pass it on to private sector, because this is their job to try to make it sustainable and generate enough revenue for that infrastructure to sustain and to last. And sometimes these are the challenges, because you spend more time having conversations that are most of the time off the grid for them to understand, and then to realize that eventually the better way is another option, but that still fits what they need at the end of the day. So these are among the few challenges that we have, but I will have to say that those are nice challenges.
Thank you. Thank you for this. How the day-to-day can be different, how the challenges can also be different. And it leads me to my next question. You mentioned Cote d'Ivoire and you mentioned Mozambique, and you said that you work on multiple countries. Could you give us an overview of like all the countries that are involved in this project that you're working?
It could take a few hours if I have to go deep into every single project, but we are, yes, I
Perhaps
will
just
give
a
you just a
list.
glimpse.
Yes,
No problem.
yes, thank you.
We are very solid in Senegal, where the hub is hosted at Cabinet EDE, because they have more than 20 years experience with ONAS. So right now they know how ONAS work, they know where ONAS is going, and they support ONAS in identifying key strategic TAs that can bring public authorities and private sector on board, and make sure that now, from the construction of toilet all the way to the valorization, there will be eventually private sector integration and intervention. So over there, we saw that they are looking at all the value chain and seeing where are the mismatch and where we should untangle, and try really to say, okay, construction of toilet, since when it is an agency role or mandate, it should not. So those are the locking point that we will support on us and say, okay, now let's have a legislative and regulatory framework that allows private sector to jump in and to own this type of industry now. So you as owners, you just need to not longer to pilot, but to have a board that can tell you who's doing what are the KPIs, what are the indicators, what are the performance, and just for you to monitor and see how the activity is progressing. So all over the value chain. Now they have passed it on to the private sector, and it's among the only countries in Africa, in sub-Sahara Africa, that has delegated the management of treatment plans, fecal sludge treatment plans, to private sector. So on the same areas of expertise, some countries, Cote d'Ivoire first wanted to learn from that experience and avoid the lessons or the mistakes that their counterpart countries has done, and try to learn from it. So right now they are, thanks to Senegal guidance, avoiding some mistakes. But other countries like Ethiopia, they have a World Bank project of 1+ billion USD in 22 countries, and they ask, we just finished the TA, so they asked the support of the TA Hub, and we're like, okay, we cannot help you in 22 countries. So let's take one city, make it a model and an example for 10 others that are willing to tag along and learn from the best practices. And now let's try to give them a roadmap of where they are right now on sanitation and where they want to go and how to get there, making sure that they have not only the enabling environment, but create themselves the private sector, making sure that they will have trucks to dislodge, there will be treatment plants to treat, and eventually byproducts that can be valorized and get back into a market to generate a circular economy. Then you go to some countries like Kenya, where we work closely with the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources, but also the African Development Bank and the World Bank in two separate projects. And we try to say, guys, this is what we are doing on one side. You should learn from it, even if you're tackling it from another angle, then you will complete at a certain point what we are trying to do for sanitation in Kenya. And you know what other donors are doing. And the next step is to help the ministry to convene a donors conference and to make sure that their need will be met by the private sector, but also with the donors, and not longer having one-to-one conversation to every single partner to say, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is where I want you to help me or to support me. This is the type of loan I need to. So we believe that having, for example, for Ghana, this roundtable donor is very key and important. And they will bring more than 20 partners. So from the European Investment Bank to ECOWAS, to African Development, to World Bank, to all of them, to understand where the country is heading and how eventually it will fit their mandate to support the country. After we had some small TA in countries such as Sierra Leone in Freetown for the medium-term to long-term investment of Freetown Master Plan. And this one, we believe, is among our success story because we arrived quite late, 90% of completion of studies, and they say, hey, guys, try to bring on board the CWISE principle, citywide inclusive sanitation. So bring on board the equity, sustainability, planning, performance, and so on. And then we're like, you almost finished the studies, but okay, let us try to pinpoint where it is missing, guide you some. And after the roundtable donor and our intervention, they have raised more than 100 million USD promise for funding for sanitation in Freetown in the medium to long-term master plan. We have published an article, I think, in AFWASA related to that because other countries, stakeholders, not only academics, but also private sector, government, and so on, need to know where button to push if you want to trigger more investment and bring on board eventually more partners, because now it makes it more equitable, more sustainable, and that tick crosses for many of the donors and the partners that says, okay, I don't want to finance purely infrastructure. I need the service behind. I need the quality behind. I need the environmental impact behind. I need the health involvement impact behind, and so on. So these are glances of the type of TA that we have provided, and up to today, it makes it every day challenging, but still rewarding and very interesting.
Thank you. Thank you. It's very interesting to see the wide geographical reach of your work and also the impact that it can have at the continental level and how that impact can be differentiated from one country to the next. So to tie it back to the NGS Knowledge Hub, how do you think that the work that you're doing and your organization can benefit from this hub? And a second question would be, how do you envision the Knowledge Hub contributing to the WASH ecosystem as a whole?
Okay, so how it will benefit the global picture and agenda in Africa. I think that what the hub is doing is excellent because we are showing new technologies. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We don't need to start all over again. If we see something that has been working somewhere, the question is, how can we adapt it locally? How can we bring our own private sector on board and tell them, this is what they are doing in South Africa, for example. We have visited the New Gen, and I think it was in Pretoria and in the neighborhood. And the impact on community was tremendous. The effect was beneficial at so many layers that the next question is, how can I have it in Cote d'Ivoire or in Senegal or somewhere else, but made it locally? So I need to make sure that WRC or whoever partners is coaching those South African people can help me transit and transmit it to my hub eventually in those countries, and make sure that they learn best practices and they learn how to manufacture locally. We, again, as I've mentioned, don't create the wheel. There is no point telling them this is working there, try to do the same here. No. Go there, see how it works, and start thinking how to bring it and how to make it locally. But you need that expertise. You need to benchmark, to learn all those failures and try to avoid them. There is no point on replicating failures, right? Try to catch up and try to do your best and bring something that fits your people, that fits your need, because might not be 100% the same, but adapt the 20 and eventually create something that works for you. This is really what we want people to see. And we believe if Senegal went to South Africa to see WRC and how they operate within the environment, to bring the private sector on board, to bring regulators on board, to bring so on and so on, academics, researchers, all of them on board. If you bring Ethiopia on board, if you bring Nigeria on board, then you can start creating a market, and not only at the country level, but eventually region or continental level. And I believe eventually that can be the future of the new generation for sanitation technology and so on in Africa. So now please help me with the second question.
Oh, the second was, how do you envision the Knowledge Hub contributing to the WASH ecosystem as a whole? I think you touched on it to some extent in your first answer, but if there's something you want to add, please feel free.
WASH is the biggest envelope for most of the donors in Africa. So now what we need the country to understand is how to make the request on their own terms. Because at the end of the day, it's their money that they borrow to DFIs. Now they need to understand how to be better borrowers and how to see how they will repay the loans. Because at the end of the day, it's still loans. You will have to pay it one day or another. But if you can think from the beginning on how to repay it and prepare yourself accordingly, then eventually you can keep on rolling with this loan approach and tool, making sure that every loan you make ended up being paid within 5-7 years and generate another and so on. And it will be tremendous on our GDP in Africa the day we or the wrongdoing of water and sanitation towards the economy. Because studies up to now are still arguing if $1 invested in sanitation has an impact between 4 to 7 USD in the GDP. So it means that the day we take care of our water and sanitation challenges, we will have much more money for our infrastructure, for our food security, for so many other sectors. It's just that sometimes it's not the priority for some government, but we are here together to try to bring it on board and say, guys, hey, keep in mind water and sanitation. It has a huge impact. You have no idea, but let us show you how. And I think the ball is rolling. We are getting there. It's coming. And it's taking some time, fair enough. But I believe that within the next 5-10 years, water and sanitation will have done a tremendous jump ahead. Build strong circular economy out of it. We ended up reusing all the byproducts, then it becomes a new market that you create in all these sectors. Thank you.
Thank you. This brings us to the end of this feature. Mr. Madeira, again, thank you very much for your time and for sharing valuable insights and experience to learn about the work that you do and the impact that you have throughout Africa.
Pleasure.
And to our viewers, thank you for joining us for this second edition of the NGS Knowledge Hub feature.
Thank you so much. Pleasure was all mine. And please, if there is anything that we can disseminate through our pool of experts, through our countries of intervention, through the donors, do not hesitate. We are here as a platform just to share the knowledge and to learn from one another and to tell them, let's all benchmark, see what has been done somewhere else, let's learn best practices and try to use it. Why not? Let's save some time, save some money, save some lives, and Africa will get better eventually.
Thank you.
And only together we can get there.
Thank you. We'll make sure to let you know.
Thank you so much.